here. Right, so thanks for joining, and I'll just do a quick little self-intro here as well. So I am the JET Program Coordinator at the Consulate General of Japan here in Calgary. I've been working as JET Coordinator since September of 2017. So this is my 4th year doing it. And I was also a JET participant for 3 years in Nagasaki in Unzen City. And I taught at 1 junior high and 5 elementary schools. So it's quite a varied experience, a lot of fun. So I've been, not only am I in charge of running it here, but I've also been through the entire process myself, start to finish. So hopefully there should be not anything that I can't answer directly from my own experience in terms of questions later. But that's enough about that. Let's get into it. So first, there we go. Okay. What exactly is the JET program? So the Japan Exchange and Teaching Program, or JET for short, is a government-funded initiative, and it has 2 main goals. So the mission is to promote grassroots level internationalization and improve English language education in the local Japanese communities and in their education system. So this is all in the public education system in Japan. So you're working from kindergarten to grade 12, and you do also make the occasional visit to preschools and that sort of thing, but mostly elementary, junior high, high school. Established in 1987, Canada started sending jets in '88. As of July 1st, 2019, there's over 5,700 current jets from 57 participating nations around the world. As of July 1st, so the same day, 550, more than 550 of those are Canadians. And so we try to maintain that number each year. So each year there are some Canadian jets that are coming home, and that's why we are always doing new promotion and new recruitment to send new Canadian jets to carry on and maintain that number. So the way it works is there are 2 bodies of the Japanese government that run the JET program. So on the Japan side, there is the Council of Local Authorities for International Relations, or CLAIR, which is tasked with fostering grassroots internationalization in Japan. They also have a North American headquarters in New York, and the North American CLAIR headquarters handles affairs for returning jets to Canada and the US. So if you're looking for an official record of your participation and employment, that would be who you would talk to. You would talk to CLAIR, not necessarily me. You could send me an email and then I could point you in the right direction. But you would go to them to get your official record. And then there is the recruitment of participants, so the promotion, interviews, preparation, and training, which is carried out by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. So that is the branch of the Japanese government that I work for as JET coordinator. So they are the ones that run the promotion and prep work for those applying and who will be going to Japan on JET. And also we do help to some extent those who have come back from JET back to Canada at the embassies and consulates of Japan around the world. Right, so for the aspiring JET, for those interested in applying, this is not an exhaustive list, but these are all the really important things. So first and foremost, and should almost go without saying, but a strong interest in Japan, the language and the culture. And that is one of the things that we will be curious about, is why does it have to be Japan? If you're interested in going to teach English overseas, why wouldn't you be happy with teaching in Spain or Portugal or China or Korea or something? What is it about Japan that draws you? Is important to think about and have an answer to. You need to be a university graduate or become one by the departure date. So those of you that are in 4th year, you can start your application process. And in place of a copy of your bachelor's degree, you would just submit a copy of your letter of expected grad, which has the date of when you're going to actually get your degree. And then once you do get it, as soon as you can, send us a copy then. You need to be a Canadian citizen in order to apply for the JET program in Canada. If you're a citizen of another country and you don't have Canadian citizenship, you would need to apply to JET through the Embassy or Consulate of Japan in the country with which you hold citizenship. So if you're a US citizen, you would apply through the US. If you're a citizen of the UK or South Africa or wherever, and as long as that nation is a participating nation in JET, then that's how you would go about doing that. Obviously, since the vast majority of JET participants are assistant language teachers, ALTs, and I'll get more into details of that later, but English speaking skills, both spoken and written, need to be quite up there. You need to be able to communicate effectively, and your written skills need to be at a professional level, obviously, because you're going to be teaching English. Adaptability is important because the work and general life routines and culture of Japan are vastly different from anything in Canada or other countries. So the ability to sort of roll with the punches and go with the flow is very important, as these are just the normal things that everyone does. And if you are uncomfortable in that situation, it's going to be a bit difficult for you. You can't have previously been on the program for more than 5 years. You also cannot apply if you recently applied and were offered a position, but then declined. And the important thing here is if you applied, got the interview, and were successful at the interview and became what is called a shortlist candidate, and then had your placement assigned. So you were told by me, okay, you're going to go to this city and prefecture, and you're going to be teaching at these, and you're going to be teaching at these schools. If after that point you withdraw, which you can, if you have another job or something else happens, you can do that, but you won't be allowed to apply again for the year immediately following. And same goes for if you have just returned from participating on JET. You cannot go and apply again for the year immediately following that. There's a 1-year waiting period. Also, it's important for people applying to want to maintain proactively relations with Japan even after you're done JET. And this isn't just something that serves us, it's also something that is important for you to think about, because it will serve you in terms of how does JET fit into your overall career plan. I remember meeting personally a lot of JETs when I was coming home from JET in my last year, who were feeling a mix of anxiety and also kind of sad, because where they wanted to go next professionally was very, very difficult to connect and relate to the experience of being on the JET program. So teaching young children English in Japan didn't necessarily transfer over into where they wanted to go. There was one guy who wanted to get a job at an accounting firm, and the accounting firm didn't even know what JET was. So he was having a hard time convincing them that his experience over the past 5 years was transferable and valuable to them. So something to think about when you're applying to this is, how is JET going to help you? How is it going to be relevant and useful for your career afterwards? Because there is a time limit, and we'll get into that in a bit here. All right, so the 2 positions that Canadians can apply for. One is the ALT, Assistant Language Teacher. This makes up about 90% of JET participants, and they're broken into a couple of different categories. So there's the school-based ALT, and so typically the way this works is you have your one base school where you go to most of the time, and then you rotate through a few other what they call visit schools. And in this particular category, there's kind of another little subdivision that's not written here, but it's you're either a municipal ALT or a prefectural. And what this means is that municipal tends to be, in most cases, elementary and junior high. So myself, I was a municipal ALT, which meant that I taught at junior high and elementary. And then the prefectural ALTs were the ones that taught at senior high schools, so grades 10, 11, and 12. As I mentioned, some jets did also make the occasional visit to kindergartens and preschools, but that was only once every 2 or 3 months or something like that. Most of the time was spent in the K-12, or well, I guess elementary to high school public school system. None of it, I shouldn't say none, the vast majority, 99% of contracts are with public boards of education, although there is the odd one with private, but that's very, very, very small. For all intents and purposes, you are a government employee, civil servant, or koumuin in Japanese. Then the other category is a one-shot ALT, so you're still working for the Board of Education, just like the school-based one, but in this case, you will have many, many different schools, and you'll visit them on a rotating basis. There was one ALT I knew that had 20 schools, and he would visit one each day. Your individual contract will tell you, and you'll receive that before you go, so you'll know exactly how many schools that you will be teaching at and how frequently you'll be visiting each one of those schools and everything. And everyone's contract is a little bit different. So you'll have to wait until you get your first contact from your contracting organization or Board of Education in this case to know the details of your specific arrangement. The ALT does what is called team teaching. So you're working together either with the HRT, homeroom teacher, and you can see that in the little picture on the right side of the screen there. I'm going to see if I can move this. There we go. So this is an typical elementary school in Japan. So the teacher there is the homeroom teacher. They teach all the subjects, and then the ALT works with them just for the English classes. And then at the junior high or high school levels, you have a specialized Japanese teacher of English, or JTE, that you work together with. And you will create games and activities and short parts of lessons, or in some cases they'll let you have the whole class, but that's not usually common. Usually it's a shared thing. So you work together to help teach the classes and do some activities. And so other things that the ALT can be involved in is foreign language clubs. So the schools might have an English club, or you could start one if you want, if the school doesn't have one already. And then there's some other sports clubs you can get involved with if you want. There's also speech contests. So junior high and higher, the kids can join and try to make a speech in English, and those are usually done in the summers. And then there's other school activities that you can get involved with. There's the sports day, or the undokai, which is a lot of fun. It's usually a weekend thing, and everybody gets involved. The students, the teachers, parents. You can even join in. It's fun, silly games that you get to play. One of them that I joined in was you had to inflate a balloon and then run out to a chair in the middle of the school field, sit on it to pop it and run back, and then the next person would go. Fun, silly things like that. So it's a lot of fun. Definitely recommend taking part in those. All right, move on before I get too anecdotal. CIR, this is the other role that Canadians can apply for. This is the Coordinator for International Relations. This comprises about 10% of JET participants. This one, I'll say it right away, it does require a professional level of Japanese ability. So you need to have roughly the equivalent of about JLPT M2 or higher. You need to be able to work in an office environment, basically, with your Japanese. You're posted at government offices, so prefecture office, city office, town office, municipal office, related organizations. So this is more of an administrative type role rather than teaching. You help organize international exchange projects. So when some junior high kids from Tabor, Alberta are going to go visit Higashiyomi in Hokkaido, for example, then you would be the person in charge of organizing their trip. You know, what time they're landing at the airport, what's their itinerary, what dignitaries are they going to meet, and you need to be able to sort that all out. And then there will be some language classes that you will do with usually adult learners. You also do some translation of tourism or official documents for non-Japanese visitors. You might do some interpretation for non-Japanese visiting dignitaries. Writing newsletters, other publications, as I mentioned before, Sister City, economic exchange projects, you'll be the one coordinating that. Foreign diplomats, I mentioned already, some public speaking. So something like what I'm doing now, except you'd be making a presentation about Canadian culture or Canadian sports or something like that to the local Japanese community members. All has to be done in Japanese. So you do have to have a strong command of the language for this one. And as part of the interview for the CIR, there is a Japanese language test. Okay, so the big question, what is it that JET is looking for? I've got some character traits here, and I'll just sort of explain a little bit about what these all mean with respect to JET. So adaptability, as I talked about earlier, very important that you're able to go with the flow in terms of learning a new culture and that sort of thing. So the idea of, you know, bowing instead of handshakes, which, well, currently that's probably a good thing that we could all do because handshaking is not a really good idea right now. Or getting used to driving on the other side of the street, or getting used to always saying a greeting phrase when you see someone even just passing by, you know, adapting to a new culture. And this includes classroom culture, and I'll get to that in a little bit here. Initiative, also really important. What you will hear a lot if you do any sort of online research is people on JET who are ALTs complaining about how they get to their school and no one tells them to do anything. And then 5 minutes before class, the JTE comes to them and says, ALT sensei, do you have an activity ready? And they're sitting there going, but you didn't tell me to do anything. That's because they expected you on your own to start making some plans and activities. And then we're hoping that you would go talk to them and say, you know, hello, Tanaka sensei, I have this activity planned. What do you think? Will it work well with the kids? And they'll give you their feedback. That's part of Japanese culture, work culture in the schools. And that is what is expected. No one's going to tell you what to do. You have to take the initiative and start on your own. Creativity and humor, I'll talk about these two together. Both of these are important to be used in your role as an ALT and CIR, but specifically ALT, because for Japanese kids, English is just another subject. It's not this cool, fun, exotic thing that everyone really wants to learn. A lot of them don't know why they need to learn English. They don't care. Some of them don't want to learn English. And so English class for a lot of Japanese kids is kind of unbearable. And so your role as the ALT is to make it fun and interesting so that for the kid, they're just playing a fun game. But what they're also doing is learning English. Obviously, this one should go without saying, but a desire to learn Japanese and the culture as well. This is, you know, kind of basic, but you would be surprised how many people end up kind of sad because they don't really care and they're surrounded by it. So it makes sense if, whereas vice versa, you are very interested to learn about it, well, good luck, or good for you, I should say. You are swimming in it, figuratively, of course. But you're going to be surrounded with and inundated with Japanese language and culture. So if you are not interested in learning it, you're not going to be very happy. Same thing goes with the desire to teach. Again, especially for applying for the ALT position, that is your main job. If that is not what you're interested in doing, you are not going to enjoy yourself. Patience and humility, I'll talk about these two together because in your first year as an ALT on JET, you're bound to have a few classes that don't go very well at all. I know I had a few. And you have to have the ability to look back at what you did for the lesson and say to yourself, okay, this particular game, bad idea, didn't work. I need to change it and try something else and come back again and try it again. And understand that you won't necessarily get it right away. It may take about a month or two in some cases, depending on the individual, of course, but it may take a little bit of time to get used to it and get used to how a Japanese classroom operates. That is a thing that a lot of new ALTs crash straight into is the difference in culture between the Japanese classroom and the Canadian one. One example of this is it's a common thing for a teacher here in Canada to call on an individual student to give an answer. That's totally fine. But in Japan, that's kind of a punishment for kids who are goofing around and not paying attention. And the kids are terrified. So if you call on them, they'll think, oh no, did I do something wrong? What you have to do, what's much more successful instead, is having team games and activities. Then they're super excited about it. So that's just one example of how it may take a little bit of time because you need to learn about the Japanese classroom culture and how to be effective in that setting. Okay, the details, nitty-gritty things. The way that this works is you are placed in one of three types of settings: urban, semi-urban, or rural. And I'll just comment here briefly that your placement is assigned. It is assigned to you, and the way it works is head office in Japan will tell myself and the other JET coordinators what the placements are for the new group of participants, and then we tell you. Placements cannot be changed at this point. It is decided by them. That's the end of the story. If you cannot accept the placement, then it will be treated as a withdrawal. It is possible to apply for a transfer if you want to move around to a different placement location in Japan, but it is not likely that your request will be granted. Unless it's something like being closer to a married spouse, then that's much more likely. And I did see that happen. There was a JET that I knew, and she transferred to another prefecture to be closer to her husband. But it's not, for almost any other reason, it's not likely that they will grant that request, because when you get transferred, that means your BOE loses one ALT and they have to get a new one. So it's essentially the same as when you go home. So it's a bit of work, and they kind of don't want to do that. Now, that said, traveling around in Japan, super easy, super cheap. I managed to go and do quite a bit of sightseeing and see lots of neat stuff. And so even if you're not in a location that you really like, it's very easy to go and visit other places of Japan very frequently. So I wouldn't worry about that. And the other thing I'll say is that even if you're not initially happy with your placement, you will find that every area of Japan has its own unique charms. So very likely you will grow to love it. I know I did for my town. I was in a rural, tiny little village called Ainomachi. Tiny little farming village, really delicious potatoes. It's nice and quiet, very pretty. Anyway, the contract is a 1-year length minimum, and your direct employer is your contracting organization. So for ALTs, that's the Board of Education, or BOE. For the CIR, that's your city office. It is not with JET, and it is not with Claire, and it is not with MOFA. It is with that individual contracting organization. So for this reason, in terms of reference letters for when you're finishing your time on JET, please, please, please get them before you leave. Go to your supervisor, go to the JTE that you work with, or whoever you're going to ask, and get that sorted out. Ask them for the reference letter before coming back to Canada or moving on to wherever else you're going, because once you leave, it will be very difficult to have that taken care of. And that's a really important thing to be able to take to your employers, whoever you're going to next. It's possible to renew the contract from 1 to all the way up to a maximum of 5 years. And so this comes around in usually December, and you have until sometime in January to turn in your answer as to whether or not you intend to accept reappointment. The work weeks are your typical 35-hour weeks, Monday to Friday. There can be some events on a Saturday or Sunday, like the sports days that I mentioned. But for 95% of the time, it's Monday to Friday, 8:30 to 4:15. Now that particular time there may be a little bit different. It might be a little bit earlier, a little bit later. Look at what your specific contract says. It'll be very similar to that though. Minimum 10 paid vacation days. I had 20 vacation days, about 15 national holidays almost every month. There's a long weekend. You also have sick days that you can use as well that are separate from your paid leave. Salary and taxes. So you earn roughly 40,000 Canadian a year, and this goes up by about 1,000 Canadian each year that you continue on. So as a second year, you make a little bit more, third year, you make a little bit more, so on and so forth. You don't fill out Canadian tax return because you don't pay Canadian taxes, you pay Japanese taxes. And some of those are automatically deducted from your salary to pay for things like health insurance, dental, all that good stuff that you need when you're not feeling so well in Japan. Very, very handy to have this. So you do have health insurance as a JET participant, same as all the other teachers that you work with, because you are a government employee. Yeah, like I said, exempt from Canadian tax. So you'll have to fill out a form for the Canadian government that says you didn't earn any money in Canada and then turn that in. But your supervisor, your contracting organization should be able to help you out with that when the time of year comes. Different types of living accommodation. So each contracting organization has their own unique setup. Some of them have a house that they purchased and they use that for the ALT. So in that case, you would be inheriting your predecessor's place, and so they may or may not have furnishings all there already or not. In other cases, you'll be put up in an apartment, which was my case. I was put up in a small apartment. Mine was kind of interesting because my predecessor lived in a house that the contracting organization owned, but when I got there, they had sold that house and instead switched to a rental contract. So it will all depend on what your specific contract setup is. And that will be told to you before you leave, so it won't be a surprise. They will have everything set up for you, even if it is a rental agreement. All you have to do is sign on the dotted line and pay your initial deposits and such. So I do recommend saving up to have a little bit of a financial cushion to get you started, as you will need to pay, you know, first month's rent, and also a deposit, something called key money, etc. More details about this in your orientation before you leave. And then, of course, you'll have, you know, your first month expenses. You may or may not need to buy appliances or furniture. For my case, since I was the first one going into that apartment, I had to buy a mattress and a few other things. Not too much. I had some appliances, but your setup will be unique. And so it will be communicated to you by your contracting organization. And also you'll be put in contact with, you'll have the chance to talk with current ALTs in that area who know what your setup is going to be, and they can give you some more information as well through social media, through Facebook and whatnot. And then that responsibility will be passed on to you as well when you are in the position of, okay, we've got a new ALT coming in, let's help them get set up. Speaking of that, support. There's a lot of support available for people on the JET program. So you have your supervisor, their job is to make sure you're doing okay. You have your colleagues, you have your neighbors, friends, other jets, prefectural advisors. So prefectural advisors, or PAs, are jet participants that are selected by the government, prefectural government, to take care of any kind of larger, more complicated issues that you can't easily solve on your own. So if there's some problem at your workplace or something like that, you talk to your PA or your supervisor, and that would be the way to go and deal with that. There is a jet hotline. There's also the program coordinators. So people like me, I will help you out in terms of getting ready to go, and anything and everything that you need to make sure that you have all your documents submitted, and you know what to pack, and you know when your flight is and all that kind of stuff. But once you arrive there, then you'll want to talk to either the prefectural advisor, or there's also Claire. They do offer some support services for jets there. The hotline is one of those services. And then they also have some courses available. So Japanese courses, translating courses, interpreting courses, applied linguistics and pedagogy courses. The Japanese courses, I've taken those. Those are distance learning, so they'll mail you the textbooks and CDs, and then there's some online stuff to do at the end of each month. For the other ones, you will need to apply for special leave, because those take place during your regular working hours. So you'll need to talk to your supervisor if you are interested in taking those courses, and they may not be offered in a given prefecture. So you'll have to ask around first if you're interested in those things. Okay, so how to apply? We should be able to open up the application window mid-October or so. We're still getting the website ready, and the website is listed there, the jetprogram.ca. That also has a FAQ section if you have more questions later. And also on there, that's where you create your profile, fill out the application form with the necessary information. Then, as I mentioned before, proof of graduation, so either degree copy or letter of expected grad, university transcripts, statement of physician if applicable. So this is only if you have some kind of medical condition that requires treatment and or medication. Best to be open and upfront about anything that you need at the time you apply. If you say nothing about a condition that you have, and then later it's found out that you do have this condition and you need medication, then we're going to have a bunch of questions for you. What is the nature of the condition? What kind of treatment do you need? What kind of meds do you need? When did it start? Da, da, da. So better to just sort that all out at the time when you apply. And there's a form called a statement of physician. Later on, after the interview, if you are accepted, then there's another medical form that needs to get filled out. And that too is also where you would need to list any conditions that you're getting treatment for. And so you would just put the same information there. Now, it is a bit of time between when you apply and then interviews and then after. So it's totally possible that you might develop a new condition. That's okay. We just need to know the aforementioned stuff. So when did it start? What kind of treatment do you need? Blah, blah, blah. It's all fine. We just need to know about it. Also, something to think about is if you have prescription meds, do a little bit of online research to find out if there's a Japanese equivalent of those prescription meds available in Japan, because that's one of the things that you may need to consider, because it's possible to have your prescription meds mailed to you and bring them with you, but there are some procedures you need to do. It might actually be easier to go see a doctor in Japan, get a prescription in Japan, get those meds in Japan, so that there's no immigration processes that you have to deal with. But anyway, that's a nitty-gritty detail thing we can go into in depth later on. Proof of citizenship, so passport photo or birth certificate if you don't have one. Please be sure to have a passport that's valid for at least a few years after your arrival date. If it's not, please be sure to have it updated as soon as possible. Statement of purpose essay. This is a 2-page essay explaining why do you want to be a jet. Very important. Also, 2 reference letters are required, so don't wait around till the last minute for this one. These letters do not have to be from employers. That's, of course, the standard one, but you can also ask your prof to write you one. You can ask an instructor, or essentially anyone who knows you well in the right capacity. So for example, for myself, I asked my Aikido martial arts instructor and my piano teacher to be my reference letter people, because they had both known me for many years and could speak to my ability to do things like teach and speak in front of groups and remain calm under pressure and yada yada, all those types of professional qualities. It's important that your reference letter person, or people, I should say, know you well enough to be able to make detailed comments. If they don't know you as well, I mean, it'll still be accepted, but your application won't be as strong as compared to someone who has reference people that know them very well. Okay, so here I'll just run through the timeline here of how things go. The way it works is there's kind of 3 phases, more or less. So applicant status, candidate status, participant status. So you've got, at first, the downloading and submitting of the application, getting together all the forms, getting your statement of physician form, getting that all filled out and getting it all submitted to the Embassy of Japan in Ottawa by the deadline, whenever that is officially set. And this is all done online through something called the JET portal. So you get all the forms, fill everything out, submit it. Then, so then you're at the candidate status phase here. So early January, you find out from the embassy whether or not you get the interview. By the end of January or early February, then you have the interviews carried out. And this year, because of COVID, we are looking at potentially doing online style interviews, kind of like what we're doing here, but they're obviously a lot shorter. And instead of what we would usually do is have people come to the consulate for the interviews, but we shall see how things proceed with regard to that. Then late March, early April or so, dates vary year to year, you find out whether or not you are accepted. You're either shortlist, alternate, or disqualified. Disqualified is very straightforward. Sorry, we can't offer you a position. Alternate is you're on the wait list. If a position opens up, then you get to go. Shortlist is you're going for sure, and we have more paperwork to do, and start packing your bags. You need to get ready to go. So then we move into the final thing here, which is the participant status. So I mentioned before the placement notification. So when I tell you, okay, you're going to be in this prefecture and city, you're going to be teaching at these schools, da da da. At that point, you officially become a participant. And so from that point, if you withdraw, then you have the 1-year waiting period. Anytime before then, it will not be applied to you. Part of the reason that we do this is to discourage people from flip-flopping and making decisions on a whim. Because if at this point, after you've got your placement assigned and you withdraw, that's problematic, because at that point, the BOE has been told so-and-so from Canada is coming. So they start to draw up your rental contracts and all the other documents that they need for you. If at that point you withdraw, then all that stuff is out the window and they need to start a bunch of processes all over again. So it's a bunch of work for them, it's a bunch of work for us, causes a lot of trouble, so we want to discourage people from doing that. Of course, if you have a very serious pressing reason, you are, of course, free to withdraw. So if you need to take care of a family member who's ill or something like that, then of course you're not locked into anything. And in that case, for humanitarian grounds, if you withdraw at any point, then we don't apply the 1-year waiting period. So then through May, June, and July, there's more paperwork to be done. So criminal record check, certificate of health, insurance form, visa application, degree copy for people who still need to submit theirs. And then also around that time, usually June or July, there's the pre-departure orientations carried out by the JET Alumni Association. So these are people who've gone and done JET, like myself, and they organize usually on a weekend, usually it's a one-day event, and they give you all sorts of really, really helpful tips and advice about things like team teaching, living in Japan in general, what to pack, things to expect, all super helpful information. They're really cool people, and they run other Japan-related events here as well. So once you come back, they're a great group to reach out to once you are done and if you come back to Canada, because if nothing else, there are a bunch of other people who've also done JET, and you can reminisce about, isn't it great when you can go to the onsen after work and stuff. And they also hold some events as well. If you're just missing Japan, they'll hold things like Japanese cooking classes, Japanese language classes. They also do some career support events for people who've just come back and might need a little bit of help with the job search and that sort of thing. We're actually organizing one of those events right now. We've got an event planned for middle of October, and we're going to have a person come in and give some job search advice and how to spruce up your resume and that sort of thing. So the Alumni Association is a great group to reach out to, both before you leave if you have any questions, and after you come back if you just need some other fellow JET alumni to hang out with, or if you're needing a little bit of support as well. And also, normally, we also have a lot of, whenever there's a Japan-related event that's happening in your area, JET alumni are some of the first people that we, the consulate, go to get involved in these events as well. So things like, well, it hasn't been happening this year, but Oda Fest here in Calgary. We like to have a few JET alumni volunteers there, or similar events in Winnipeg and Edmonton and other places like that, or other similar Japanese cultural events. We like to reach out to JET alumni to have them come and be at the consulate booth to talk about the JET program, or just Japan in general, to anyone who's interested. So it's a great way to get involved as well through the Alumni Association. So definitely recommend checking them out once you've come back from Japan to Canada. And then finally, getting back to our timeline here, early September, that's when you would actually have the departure to Japan. So there'd be, I would organize a orientation and a little bit of an event before everyone departs. And in that case, we would have all of the Calgary jurisdiction JET participants come to Calgary for that event, and then the next day you would all depart out of Calgary. So for that purpose, and our jurisdiction covers Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba. And so for anyone that needs to fly in out of town, we would cover your accommodation fees of the hotel and that sort of thing, so that you're here in Calgary and you don't have to come in all on your own the morning of, which would be a lot of trouble, but we'll get that all set up for you. And I think that is it for the timeline. And then, yeah, like I mentioned before, there's the website if you have other questions. There's the JET desk. So the Calgary JET desk, you've got the email address listed there. That one, I don't always have access to it. I can share my other email address that I have much more frequent access to it due to working remotely. There's the JET Canada Twitter, Facebook as well. But probably the best place to go is the JET Canada website, or just contacting me directly. And that is it in terms of presentation that I have. So I'm going to stop sharing now. So we've got a bit of time left here, and now I'll take any questions that people have had. So if you want to, if you want to type them in the chat, or if you want to ask them directly, you can go ahead.
Hello.
Hi.
Okay, cool. I'm the only one in the room. Or that's a participant. Thank you for hosting this because I like recently came upon the webpage, and then I
Mhm.
wasn't sure if it was going through or if I should start my application because of COVID and everything.
Yes.
Um, but if applications are going to open in October, and
Hmm.
then I'll start my application.
To my knowledge, they're gonna get things rolling around then. So right now, I don't think even if you go on there, I don't think you can start applying just yet.
Not yet, but I
But
I got. Oh, sorry. Continue.
sorry, no, that's okay. Go ahead.
Okay. No, but I signed up for like the email notifications, and they
Mm.
sent out like sort of a template or like what I should start prepping. So
Mm.
that
Okay.
was that was helpful.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I guess my one big question is, like you said that our placements, we can't pick them and that they're assigned to us.
Yes.
But
I guess one thing I should have said there is when you submit your application, you can put in a placement request.
oh,
You
okay.
can say, I would like to go this prefecture in this city, da da da, and because
Okay.
of this thing or that, and you might get it. It's
Okay.
possible. It's very possible. Look, some people do get their request, others don't. So I think there's three choices. Choice number one, two, three, and then you can say why, and then you might get it, you might not.
Uh-huh.
It depends.
Okay. Okay, that's good to know.
Hmm.
I mean, you did say like if I was placed in rural, like I'd find like the unique Japanese charms, but I'm more of like I think I'd prefer urban. So that's good that there's that option.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
and I couldn't really say how likely it is that you get your placement. I don't know, maybe
Uh-huh.
like 30 40% chance, but that's just a rough guess. But some people do get the request, so it does
Okay.
happen. And yeah, like I said, travel inside Japan is really not difficult at all. I was in, like I say, a tiny little village in Nagasaki, but I was able to easily go visit my friends in Tokyo and travel around the Kyushu Island and stuff. So
Yeah.
it's really not a big deal even if you are kind of out in the boonies, as they say.
Yeah, I'm sure it's better than Calgary Transit. I know that.
Yes.
What else? What else did you tell? Okay, so my transcripts. So I did a semester abroad at a different university. So
Mm-hmm.
then would I need to get those transcripts too?
Hmm. That might be a thing to talk with the U of C about, because if as long as those courses counted towards your degree,
Yeah.
then they should be listed on your U of C
Oh,
transcript.
okay. Okay.
Um, because I also did some courses at Central University near Tokyo, and
Mm,
those were Japanese. They were part of the Japanese program at the U of C, and so they were on my U of C transcript. I didn't need to get the one from Central University. So as long as they're all there, all the
okay.
courses that you need to graduate are on your U of C, then you should be good. If they're not, then yeah, you might need to get that from that university.
Right. Okay. Thanks. And then I think my last question would be, how much would you recommend or suggest for like savings before
Yes.
arriving there?
Yes, good question. So the minimum I would say would be a roughly 2,000 or 2,500.
Okay, that's
A much
doable.
more comfy amount would be somewhere around 5,000 or so, just
Okay,
because that'll make it easier for you to get through that first month before you get your first paycheck. And you, like I say, depending on your living arrangements,
yeah,
you may or may not need to buy some um, appliances and furniture and stuff. You might not. You might just go into a house that's already fully furnished and that sort of thing.
okay.
So it
No,
really
that's
depends.
reasonable. Yeah. Oh, wait, I thought of one more. Oh, how many people usually apply to the program?
So it varies year to year. Let's try to pull up the numbers mentally here. So this past year we had about 140
Okay.
for our jurisdiction apply, and then of those that applied, about 100 were selected for interviews, and then of those that were selected after the interviews, roughly half of the interviewed candidates were actually chosen to become shortlist candidates. So that's not counting the alternate candidates, the people on the waiting list. So roughly, from each phase, so the initial application phase, interview phase, it's about a third that is cut along the way. And so roughly a third of the people that apply initially end up getting to go. But, it varies year to year. Sometimes, some years, more people are accepted, sometimes less. It depends on how many people are needed to fill the positions that are being opened up by JET participants that are coming back, kind of thing.
Okay. I see. And then I just thought of something else. I keep saying it's my last question, but I hear
No worries.
Then I think I remember seeing something about like there's an option for early departure.
Yes. Now, I'm not sure what's going to happen with regard to that for this year specifically, but yes, usually, if it does happen, usually what it is when you apply, you can say, I want to leave on early departure, which is in April.
Okay.
So what that means is, if we go back to, I'm going to do the screen share again so that I can refer to the necessary thing. So if you can see on the screen there, with the second round of paperwork submission, the criminal record check, certificate of health, insurance form, those three. Well, the insurance form, we need to give you some information so you can complete that. But the criminal record check and certificate of health need to be submitted with your original application if you are intending to go on early departure. Okay. If you are going to go with the regular departure, which is in September here, then you don't need to worry about this second round of paperwork until after the interviews and you get your interview results notification. The reason is because you depart usually for early departure in April, which means that this paperwork here, it takes a little bit of time. So you'd need to have that all taken care of and sorted out by like sometime in March so that you could be ready to depart in April. So that's the only thing that you need to be aware of if you're going to do, if you're going to ask to depart early, is that there's some extra paperwork that you have to have done around the time of the application. That's helpful. And like I said, if you're not going to, then don't have to worry about it. And we will ask you as well, if you are selected for the interview, we will be confirming with you, are you still willing and able to depart in April? And as long as you are, still willing, that's great. If something changes and you're no longer able or willing to depart in April because your work situation changed, your living situation, anything, you can say at the interview, oh, actually, I can't go in April anymore. I want to go to the normal summer, early fall departure. That's totally fine. Okay. Where we would run into trouble is if you said you wanted early departure at the application, then at the interview, we confirm and you say, yes, I'm still willing to go in April. Then after the interview, you say, oh, sorry, I can't go anymore. Then it's problematic. Then I think it could result in a possible disqualification after the interview, even if you're successful. Yeah. So it's totally fine if something changes and you can't go in April anymore, but we need to know at the time of the interview. because that's when we, send off all the information to head office. And from that point, we can't change it anymore.
Okay.
And they operate
Makes
based on all
sense.
that information.
Okay.
So it's important to have this stuff sort of planned out and sorted. And, if changes do occur, then of course, let us know as soon as possible.
Okay. I think this is really my last question now. How many ALTs are assigned to a school? Like one ALT a school?
It can depend. So most of the time, it's one ALT for a few different schools. So the most common thing is, and I think I mentioned at the beginning, so for example, I was at the one junior high, and that was my base school, and then 5 elementaries. So I would go and visit those schools on a rotating schedule. And most other ALTs in my city had a similar kind of setup. Some of them had 2 junior highs and 4 elementaries, and some of them had, it was a mix, something like that. There are some cases where at a very large school, for example, like a high school that gets lots of students in from different areas, then you might have 2 or sometimes even 3 ALTs all working at one school. But that's less common. The more common thing is you're the only ALT at a given school, whether it's high school, elementary, junior high, and you're the only, non-Japanese staff member at the school, is usually how that goes.
Okay.
You will be part of a board of education, so there will be very likely other ALTs that live in your city. You may or may not be living in the same living arrangements. There were a couple of cases where I think, there was one ALT that lived in the same apartment building as me, but most of the time the ALTs are kind of spread out throughout the city. So for my board of education, there were 6, including me. We all lived in the same city, but we were at different locations around the city.
Okay.
So are you in 4th year right now, or have you graduated?
Yeah, I finished in February.
Okay, so you have your degree then?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that's good to go. That's good. So you
Yep.
can put that all together. Yeah, good.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you for your time.
Thank you. And
It's very
I
informative.
will pass my email on, because the Jet Desk email there is, I don't always see that one.
Okay.
See if I can put it in the chat here, so that if later on there's some other questions that you didn't think of today, send it to this email here.
Okay.
Let's see, hold on. And Brian can pass this on as well to anyone who's interested in finding out more information about JET in general.
Okay. Sounds good. All right.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks for coming.
Bye.
Take care.
You too.